Imagine spending the equivalent of rent for a tiny Brooklyn apartment on a pair of shoes, only to develop a paralyzing phobia of sidewalks. It is a fascinating phenomenon. The individual shells out over $1,000 on a pile of glued rubber, foam, and leather, and suddenly starts walking the streets of Chicago as if stepping through a minefield. Any puddle of water or raindrop on the asphalt turns into the apocalypse. Why have adult human beings started treating simple sports sneakers as if they were the actual Mona Lisa? What makes someone prefer to wrap their own feet in plastic rather than risk touching the sole to the dirty floor of the New York subway? The objective here is exactly to unravel the minds of those people who believe the pinnacle of evolution is wearing a work of art that, deep down, was made in a factory on the other side of the world. However, to understand how this level of madness was reached, it is first necessary to analyze exactly what goes on inside the head of someone who has turned their own closet into an untouchable museum exhibition. Entering the mind of a sneaker collector is like visiting a parallel dimension where the laws of physics and common sense have been suspended and replaced by the worship of shoelaces. The most striking characteristic of this specimen is the absolute dread of the dreaded creases. Those small, inevitable folds at the toe of the shoe. To avoid this tragedy, a peculiar walking technique is developed, something between a cast-bound penguin and a duck trying to walk on a layer of thin ice. But the ritual does not stop at locomotion. Observing the moment a newly delivered box is opened is witnessing a Napa Valley sommelier tasting the rarest vintage of a wine. The individual brings their nose close to the new shoe and inhales deeply, appreciating the complex notes of fresh polyurethane, industrial glue, and synthetic cardboard. There is a fascinating illusion that pair of dyed leather possesses magical powers. It is firmly believed that, upon putting on a limited edition, a mild-mannered Ohio accountant instantly transforms into an urban fashion icon parading through Soho. However, this imaginary identity shift has a much deeper purpose than simple artistic appreciation, revealing an almost primitive need to display status to society. In the modern concrete jungle, the limited edition sneaker works exactly like the extravagant tail of a peacock, but with a small and ironic difference. The main objective is not to attract romantic partners, but to draw looks of pure envy and approval from other grown men in the hallway of a Los Angeles mall. It is the visceral need to transmit to the world the message that one has won in life. Using their heels as the main billboard for this illusion, the financial mathematics of urban exhibitionism is worthy of a Nobel Prize in reverse economics. The individual peacefully accepts adopting a strict diet based exclusively on boxed mac and cheese and instant noodles for 6 weeks straight, sacrificing their own gastrointestinal health just to make sure they will not miss that month's hyper-hyped release. It is a fascinating sociological spectacle, where success is not measured by the Bank of America balance, but by the fact of flaunting $2,000 on one's feet. They walk with the posture and arrogance of a young Silicon Valley billionaire, perfectly masking the slight detail that their credit card is agonizing at its maximum limit. All this desperate need for social validation and ostentation in footwear format did not appear out of nowhere, being in fact the meticulous result of one of the greatest and most efficient psychological engineerings ever orchestrated by the corporate world. The brilliance of the big brands, locked in luxurious meeting rooms in Oregon or Germany, was discovering how to transform the sale of pieces of plastic and synthetic fabric into the greatest human conditioning experiment ever seen. The whole magic revolves around 2 words: artificial scarcity. The industry realized that if you put a regular pair of sneakers in the window of a department store in any suburb, no one cares. But if the brand announces, "Attention, we manufactured only 12 pairs in the entire world," the stitching was done under the light of the lunar eclipse, and Travis Scott accidentally sneezed on the left shoelace of one of them, chaos is instantly established. The consumer is induced into such a deep state of despair that they subject themselves to participating in virtual draws, the famous raffles. Stop and think about the surgical insanity of this business model. The citizen enters an online lottery, desperately competing with millions of people and thousands of computer robots, not to win a cash prize, but to beg for the sacred privilege of handing over $300 from their own pocket to a multinational corporation through the SNKRS app. The famous collabs elevated this collective delirium to another level, proving that it is enough to glue a red rectangle logo or sew the company's brand upside down for a shoe, with a production cost of $20, to be eternally glamorized. Obviously, rationalizing such an expense in front of the family requires mental gymnastics worthy of a gold medal at the Olympics, which leads to the emergence of the most brilliant excuse ever invented to disguise the addiction to unbridled shopping. This mental gymnastics reaches its absolute peak when the magic word that calms suspicious wives and overdrawn bank accounts comes into play: investment. Suddenly, the compulsive accumulation of cardboard boxes in the guest room ceases to be a worrying addiction and is treated like a diversified portfolio of highly liquid financial assets. It is hilarious to observe grown men solemnly ignoring the S&P 500, treasury bonds, or the 401(k) retirement plan, only to spend their early mornings frantically refreshing the appreciation chart of a pair of glow-in-the-dark Air Jordans on the StockX app. They proclaim themselves the new wolves of Wall Street, operating a stock exchange entirely backed by vulcanized rubber and premium suede. The official excuse is always to buy to resell on the parallel market and make huge profits in the future. However, the harsh reality of resell almost always ends in the same tragicomic way. The supposed invaluable financial asset ends up enclosed in a transparent acrylic dome in the corner room, slowly yellowing in the sunlight and growing mold, while the supposed investor absolutely refuses to sell their precious item for any price. But in the end, when the dust settles and the credit card bill is finally debited from the account, what really remains of this incessant search for overvalued footwear? What remains is the undeniable realization: deep down, modern society is composed only of slightly evolved primates, desperately trying to feel special by wrapping their extremities in overpriced plastic and colorful leather. It is highly probable that the individual watching this video is, at this exact moment, looking at their own feet and silently judging their financial choices over the years. Therefore, for those who have already sacrificed rent money or survived on canned goods just to guarantee an exclusive soul, the order is simple. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and register in the comments what was the greatest economic insanity ever committed in the name of a pair of sneakers. After all, psychoanalysis sessions might even have a quite high cost, but the next release on the Nike app will certainly cause a much bigger damage to the bank account.